Okay, guys, and welcome. We are going to be jumping kind of right on into it. It is amazing how bad Camtasia is just killing my scene when I have Unreal up. I really don't know what's going on with this. Anywho, so basically, really quick, what I have here is I have a pretty straightforward HDRI setup scene. I basically followed this guy's tutorial here off of RAG 3D Viz. And it's pretty straightforward. I have an HDRI here, and this is a brand new scene. This is just me starting off with the starter content, and actually just clearing out the scene. I have a player start entity. Apparently, I have two of them in here. Why, I don't know. But you know what? We'll leave two of them in there for right now. I don't know why they're both in there. I have a directional light that mimics the sun position. That is not actually blown out. I should actually probably adjust this a little bit. Let me just find it. I found an HDRI online that I liked, and I bought it. And I'm just going to kind of set the brightness threshold. Oh, not to 4. Mother of God. So this is an HDRI image, and basically what I'm doing is I'm setting up for a look dev scene at some point. This thing updates. There it goes. 0.8, 0.9, 0.95. 1, we're apparently at the surface of the sun, which is not good, but whatever. HDR, no SG. Oh well, I don't know what it's doing, but this gives us a general indication of what's going to be happening here. Don't worry about the fact that it's totally not correct or blown out correctly. We can fix that a little later. Actually, I'll fix that right now. Post-process volume. Let's go ahead under here. Let's find our bloom. Let's adjust that, and let's adjust this intensity here, or this threshold. Pull that way down. There we go. And let's just adjust the size a little bit so it's a little tighter. It's maybe 0.5, something like that. It's a little blown out, but whatever. I'll turn that back off. Okay. So basically what I'm going to do here is I wanted to show you guys some basic material stuff. And materials in Unreal can get really crazy really fast. They can kind of go from, oh, this is fun, to holy hell, what the heck is going on? And in the starter content here, there's a bunch of like kind of basic materials. And they're all, they all work really well. You double click on it and you can kind of open it up and you can kind of see how Epic goes through and sets up the materials. So I'm not going to go over the way they do things because it's right there in front of you guys. It's just in the starter content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of my stuff, and this is going to build into something a little bit more complicated. So just kind of stay with this. Luckily, the Quixel guys have been kind enough to give us early access to the Megascans for this, which is really nice. And basically, your default material is going to look like something like this. You're going to right-click, and you're going to pull up a material. I'm just going to call this basic material. Okay, if you need to rename it, you can right-click on it, hit rename, or you can just hit F2. We double-click on it. It's going to bring the guy up. And from here, we have some basic things. Let's talk about this really quick. So underneath here, what we basically have here is we have our stats panel, which is kind of like number of instructions that we have. On this left here, we have our little preview sphere that you can click, left click in that window, you can move it around. You hit L, you can kind of move that light around. I'm holding L and left clicking, and I'm kind of dragging, move that light around. We can obviously change the primitive shapes as well. We don't have an asset, but if you had an asset selected in the content browser and you click that, it'll swap it to the surface. For right now, we're going to keep everything really simple and standard. On the left here, we have a bunch of different parameters for different effects. We have deferred decals, light functions, post-processing, and some UI stuff. Different blend modes for, translucency, opacity, and that kind of thing. And of course, different shading models. Primarily, since this is an intro, we're going to keep things really straightforward, and we're going to be focusing just on the default lit. It's pretty straightforward. On the right side over here, we have all kinds of different functions, and to be honest, I only know what a handful of these do. And I find that a lot of artists find things that they know about, and they kind of stick with it in here because this thing can get really unwieldy really, really fast. So when I start talking about shaders and materials, most of my methodology kind of revolves around KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And the reason for that is so it's cheap. Typically on games, when I have to do optimizations and that kind of stuff, it's typically not on geometry detail. It's either like alpha overdraw, texture compression, or shading, or the shaders are too complicated. And honestly, I really encourage you guys to try to do as simple shaders as humanly possible. And I know that's not the coolest thing to say, and I know it doesn't look the greatest when you only have like 5 nodes or even 3 nodes sticking out of a material editor, and you're like, here's my shader. The reason why you do that is because it's cheap, and I cannot encourage you guys enough to keep your stuff as cheap as possible, because there's certain things that you're going to want to spend your time and energy on, and as these shaders get more and more complicated, when we start dealing with blends, when we start dealing with landscape materials, it can really get expensive really, really fast. So again, keep it simple. Some basic things that you're going to want to talk about and to know. There are some pretty basic materials that or basic functions that you're going to want to talk about here. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about constant vectors. Okay, that's a very fancy way of saying a number, and it can be a number of things. It can be a 1. If I hit 1 and click into the material browser, I'm literally just hitting 1 on the keyboard and then clicking. I have a value, 1. Okay, and I'm going to plug this into the base value or base color so you can see what this thing's doing. 1 is white. 0.5, kind of gray. 0, black. Okay, makes a ton of sense. Now, we have 2 vectors. And if you notice here, it says R and G, okay? And we have 3 vectors, okay? And you notice here, it's a color, okay? RGB, okay? Makes sense. Plug that into the base. We also have the numerical inputs as well, right down here. And, of course, since we have 1, 2, 3, we also have 4, which gives us RGBA, okay? Now, these can be used to do a whole host of things, tinting masks, altering. I mean, their uses are endless. Like, I can't even rattle off all of the type of things that you could do with this stuff. The next thing that I use a lot of is I use M for multiply. So I can take a color, let's just say red, plug that in. Hit 3 again to get another color. And if I hit this down arrow here, I can kind of see what's happening. So we have this multiplication effect, right? Pretty cool. Okay. If we have multiply, then we have A for add. See what that looks like. A for add. Okay. Now, what am I doing here? I'm connecting basically one input to one input, or one output, depending on which way you're looking at the shader. Okay, and this is really simple. You have you can at any point delete a node in your shader graph, which is really straightforward. Control-Z will pull it back. If I alt-click on any one of these nodes, I can just disconnect it. Okay, which is kind of useful. Pull that back in. Now, so right there I'm dragging stuff, which is, really nice, but when the graph starts getting really big, you got 40 or 50 nodes, it's kind of a pain in the ass to deal with. So what can we do? I'm going to disconnect this add function using that that alt and left click. Just kind of reset this thing back up. I'm going to right click on this multiply node, this little output node, and I'm going to say connect that to the base color. And then I'm going to say connect this to, well, I want to show you guys proper form. So I'm going to say connect this to the emissive color. Okay, and you can see there it's slightly bright, not too bright, but slightly bright. The next thing that we're going to be doing a lot of, and so you just right click and you can obviously connect it anywhere in here. We right click at any point. We can also say, hey, let's start previewing just this node here. You notice it took out all of these other shading contributions, okay? So, and then at any point we can say stop previewing, and it'll view the entire shading tree, which is really nice. Most of our shaders, I'm just going to select all of these guys and hit delete. Most of our shaders are going to follow, at least for this intro course, are going to follow a really basic kind of formula. We're going to have an input for the base, some kind of input for the base. Maybe there's a multiplier or something that's changing the color. But we have a multiply for the base. We're going to have a vector typically or a map for our metallic input. And since we're going to be doing PBR shading, really straightforward here on the metallic inputs. Typically it's going to either be a 0 or a 1. Okay, 1 is going to give a full reflection of the cube map. We're going to bypass specular because we're doing a PBR workflow, so we don't really need to dive too much into specular. I'm going to hit 1 again on the keyboard so I get another vector or a constant. I don't know. Basically, it's a number. I'm going to plug that into the roughness. Okay. Now this is important to talk about. So we have, okay, next thing that we can do here, since we're doing our PBR model here, is if we look at this, we have 1 being full white, 0 being full black. Okay, so basically what we're saying is in this little basic shader language, we're essentially saying, hey, we want some red color, we want full metallic, and we want no roughness on the surface. Okay, so white meaning yes or all the way on, 0 meaning none. Okay, pretty straightforward, but it's going to be important to remember that because this is going to explain why our PBR maps and stuff look the way they do, because they're essentially talking in the same language, they're just using a bitmap to do it. If I set this value to 0.5, look at that, okay? And if any of you guys have seen any of the Intro to Unreal stuff, this is all basic stuff. This is all really simple, basic things that we're talking about right now, and it's all stuff that they've covered. I'm just talking about it really quick. We'll also have an input for the normal and in the ambient occlusion, okay? And that is going to be pretty much the extent of how far we're going to take these shaders for the most part. We're going to get a little more in depth, but that's the basic functionality behind them, okay? If we want to have transparency, we need to change our actual blend mode. So right now we're at opaque. That's basically like a brick, right? You can't see through a brick. Translucency, think of this as like translucent glass or anything like that. If we want this, we notice when I switch it to when we want to have transparency, you notice it dropped a bunch of this shader functionality. And it did that because it's being optimal. You notice the shader count, the instruction count, all of that stuff changed, okay? And that's stuff too that's important to pay attention to, because as you start making these shaders, the more complicated they get, the more expensive they are to render. But if we want to have, you know, nice things such as reflections, let's go ahead and change this to volumetric directional. Is this the right one? Nope. Where is it? It's per vertex directional. Nope. Where are you? Oh God, it's all coming undone. There it is. That shouldn't matter though. There it is. I'm going to move this over here and apply so we can see this kind of happening. Okay, this is the downside to this once we start playing around with transparency and stuff. In Unreal, it can get a little hairy. It can be done. You definitely can do things with transparency and stuff, but unfortunately, it's not the most robust. So I'm going to put this as a value for 0.5 here. I'm just adjusting the opacity so you can kind of see through it. Okay. And obviously we can go through and keep playing with a bunch of these. And as we keep playing with them, they're going to get more and more complicated, and they're going to get more and more weird. Let's play with the refraction a little bit as well, just to show you guys that. Okay, you see that? It's refracting the object on the other side. And let me adjust this. It's a little shinier, so. Okay. And with the normal app, obviously, it can look better. Translucency, let me just kind of show this really quick. This is a really nice way to kind of see how expensive your stuff is starting to get. So what we'll do here is we're going to come under here. Where are you? No, I should have been over here. We're going to look at shader complexity, okay? So this guy, we have literally 3 nodes, well 4 nodes, and it's expensive, okay? It's expensive because it's the way Unreal renders. It's I believe it's a forward renderer. Let me double. Yeah, essentially it's a deferred renderer. So things such as transparency and translucency can get really expensive. And again, you just watch me change this really quick, and you can kind of see this thing update. Okay, I have it selected, so obviously it's going to change differently. But I'm just going to keep driving through this just so you can see this really quick. I'll just put this opacity mask. Oops, sorry. Just plug this guy into the opacity mask as well. Okay. Now, why did that not do it? Let's look at what the heck's going on with the masked translucency, okay? Now watch this. 0, bye-bye. 0.1, still gone. 0.5, it's back. Okay? This is a binary thing. This is within a threshold of 0 to 1. It literally clips it. It's made for masks. It's made for things like material, or for you can use it for foliage. You can use it for a bunch of other little like decals and that kind of stuff as well. Additive blending as well. Let's go back into here. Let's apply that. Okay. So what's up with the additive blending? Let me show you guys again in the shader complexity here so you guys can see it. Come on, where are you? Okay. Still expensive, but also check this out. Oh, these things become a huge pain in the ass to select once they start going transparent. Why did you do that? That should not have done that, actually. There it goes. Okay. It's going to be a pain in the ass to select because it literally is transparent. Let's go through the object liner here. Select them. The other thing too to talk about is watch what happens when I start to duplicate things in between this stuff. Starts to get some really funky things, and you can get into a lot of sorting issues as well with it. Just in general, you can get into sorting issues with transparency, and it can be really expensive. So just be careful with it if you're going to use it. You know, things like foliage, you got to use it, right? Like you can't get around it. But again, as you guys saw, as this thing starts to stack up, it starts to get really expensive. We're not in the holy hell. We're not in the white area yet, but we want to stay in the green as much as possible. So I'm just going to keep walking through this really quick just so you guys can kind of see some of the shading stuff as well. Actually, we don't need to go into modulate. That's going to be fine. Go back to opaque. And again, we can kind of go kind of crazy with the opaque stuff. We're not going to dive into this stuff. This is more advanced things that Unreal has to offer, but for the sake of this demo and the sake of time, we're not going to go into that. So you guys, if you want to, please do. I encourage you guys to do that. Okay, so let's talk about some things since we kind of have a pretty basic and straightforward understanding of the materials. Pretty basic, right? We're not going to ship a game yet, but we have like a basic understanding of stuff. At any point, there's a bunch more functionality that I'm not going to go into here. I'm just going to go into some generic stuff really quick. If I have a bunch of nodes that are just kind of lying around, A, it gets expensive, and B, it's a pain in the ass to start navigating stuff. But if I hit clean up, it'll go through and knock all those nodes out. The other thing, live nodes. Not live nodes, connections. Connections is really nice because connections will eliminate the things on the shader, the main shader branch, that you don't have connections to, which is really cool, especially if you're trying to clean stuff up. Okay, but I want you to notice every time I have to do a change to this, I have to save it, and then I have to apply it, or apply and then save it, and that can get expensive, right? That's kind of a pain in the ass. What if I told you there was a way that you didn't have to deal with that crap? There's a way that you can literally, and this is where Unreal totally shines in their material editors. It's some of the best stuff that you can work around with. All of these nodes, or the majority of these nodes, can be exposed as parameters that can be modified by something called a material instance. Material instances are really, really fucking cool. Like, you can do some really awesome things with it. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to right-click on this node. I'm going to say convert to parameter. Okay. And I'm going to say that this is my base color. Right-click, convert to parameter, and we're going to call this metallic. Actually, fuck, we're going to call it Metallica because that's just cool. It actually should be metallic, but whatever. And same thing, roughness for this. And I'm not going to worry about, actually, I'm going to just nuke this out so we don't have to deal with it. Okay? So we have all of these parameters that are exposed. Okay? Now, what does that do? You're like, Dave, that everything still looks the same. And it is. This isn't where it gets cool. So this is essentially, this material, this basic underscore mat, think of this as your living document. This is like your Photoshop document. This is where everything's going to be live, okay? And this is where you're going to iterate and do a bunch of changes and stuff, and you're going to have a bunch of fun playing around with stuff, and you're going to scream and swear because some things aren't going to work out the way you think they are. You're going to have a lot of fun with it, I promise. But I'm going to close this guy down. I'm going to right-click on this. If I come down underneath here, materials, and again, there's a bunch of options in here, but we want to come down under here, under materials, and we have this material instance, okay? Mat underscore instance. Double click this guy. Okay, so this is our material instance, okay? And if you notice, it kind of looks like the material editor, but there's like way less shit you can do with it basically, like, which is a great thing because, this is starting to kind of jump into a little bit more of the technical artist area, but it's important for people to know, even if you're not a technical artist, you should know how to do this stuff. But this is what, in a lot of pipelines, you would essentially get. And basically what I've just done was I just dragged my basic material into this reference slot, this parent slot. Okay? And so now we have this basic, this material instance right here. I'm just going to drag him out. And he's identical to the parent material in every way, shape, or form. Okay? But if you notice, we have some of these scalar parameters. I was saying vectors. Scalars. Damn it. Such a jackass. I don't know. Whatever. The vectors have 3. Scalars have 1. Our technical artists at work would be so proud of me. Now watch this. By the way, this is happening instantly. I'm not recompiling anything, which is fucking awesome. Okay? You know what? I don't want this to be shiny anymore. You know what? I really want this to be really matte. And, oh, you know what? Maybe why don't we make this darker? Oh, that's cool. We can do that. Okay? Unreal, this is the same material. Okay? Except this has been exposed. And it's cheap, too. Like you can see here, it's a vertex shader, 29 instructions. It's super cheap. Obviously, it's not doing anything cool. That's why it's cheap. But you get the idea. Now, let's say I want to have like 3 of these guys. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to copy and paste. Come on. There we go. Yeah, delete that. Okay, same thing here. Turn this one, I don't know, blue. Make this guy shiny as hell with no roughness, so it's a chrome mirror ball. Bam. Did I not update my skylight? Damn it, David. Huh. That's weird. I'll have to look into that. It should be reflecting something entirely different. Oh, I bet you the captures didn't update. There it goes. I'm a fool. Anyway, don't worry about that. I'll talk about what I just did in a second. And let's go ahead and say we want this guy to be blue. And, I don't know, not metallic, but we want it to be kind of glossy, right? So let's just adjust that, maybe 0.4. Ta-da! Okay, that may not seem cool to you guys. That is fucking amazing because this opens up a ton of shit for us, okay? And since this is an intro class, I'm not going to go crazy in depth with this, but we're going to build off of what I've just shown you. So let's have fun with this, okay? And Alt-P again will just allow you to just kind of go and look at it. Look at that. You can even see the gun in it. What a nice engine. God, that's loud as hell. Okay. Let's build off this. I'm going to hit stop and save this because Camtasia is a piece of shit.